Ready to roll? All right. Hey all, just wanted to start out these installation procedure videos with the drawings, story sticks. What we would first start out with would be marking up the drawings. So we've got these laid out. I've already marked these up, but you can get a pretty good idea of what I'm going through here. In this case, I've got just the things that you want to have on the story stick written down, so when I do start on that, I'll remember what I want to put on there, so I'm not leaving anything out. And then as we're going through the drawings, any questions that you have, you want to just put it on the front of the drawing so you can get with the superintendent on the job, the contractor, the manufacturer, so on and so forth. And then from there, you start on the plans, marking them up. In this case with Riley, they give us sheets. So we have all of our units are marked out as sheets. I'd go around, mark each one of them so I know where they're at on the location drawing, and then make the numbers bigger because the numbers are crazy small, and then highlight it so they can draw your eye. And I also try and mark out the rooms. You won't see anything on here, but marking up the study, the attic, so on and so forth. And then after these are all marked up, then we get back to our actual sheets. This is our sheet number 1, and the first thing that you're looking at is to find your controls. In this case, we're using our off-finished floor on the bottom side of the unit. So if we move this across and we find out that to get to the bottom of unit, you're trying to extrapolate the measurement to get to that bottom part. It's 18 and 7/16 off a finished floor. So that's the bottom of frame. So we'll reference that later when we're going to do our control or our benchmark control. Then we come up to we're trying to get our top of frame and our datum to carry across from door to window. At this point, we've got 7.5 off a finished floor, and I like to try and change everything to inches so that you have something that you can add and subtract. You don't have to try and figure this out as you're going along. So I highlight it all and then change it over to inches. In this case, they're using decimals. That's another reason to change it over to inches. So at this point, you've got 89 inches. That carries across to the bottom of the inside stop. At that point, you want to try and get to top of frame. So they have 1.8125, which ends up being 1 13/16. So you add that to that. So our top of frame is 90 and 13/16. So this gives us two ways of finding out how our measurements work out to our control, and I'll show you that when we're making the story sticks. Now let's move back to the door, which is really what we should have started out with first because that drives everything. Let me find one of those real quick. Here we are. So here's our door. This is the bottom of our door. This is our finished floor. We start out at 0, 0. This right here is the most important part pretty much on the job. This drives everything. This is finished floor, and all of your measurements will drive from there. So from here to get to bottom of frame, we have 1.25, which is 1 inch and 1/8. So from there we can measure down from our finished floor to bottom of frame. Now from there we're going to take that up to the top of the frame. And in this case, we would take our measurement all the way to the top, but then we have to find our other control or our datum to get to top of frame. In this case, we're going to use the elevation of 8.8, which we changed to 104, and that carries across. And then in this case, we have 125 is the thickness of the frame from that datum to the top of frame. So we add that to that, we end up with 105 and a quarter. So And they also have a shade box on here, which is something else that you can either make another story stick, which that's the likelihood of what we'll do, and then we'll carry this down to make our story stick. So let me find another unit that doesn't have the shade box on it. There we are. That seems to be a good representation, so we'll go from there. So once again, this is our true control right here. So let's start on our story stick. We've got this should be. Oops, what did I do? Oh, let me grab my tape here. So from there, let's see, we've got our top of frame is 91 1/4. We'll use the longest we got. We can actually use this. Let's start from here. Okay, so from here we start at the bottom of our story stick, and we'll start with our finished floor, which is 1 1/8 inches off the bottom. So the first mark we make is our 1 1/8 inches to there, and then there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can either move up and measure for your benchmark, or just start from the bottom of the frame, go to your 5 foot. We're just going to go with a 5 foot benchmark on this one. You go to your 5 foot and then just add your 1 1/8 inches, and here's your control. Then from there, we'll go to top of frame, which is, let's go back. Whoops, let's go back one and get our frame height, which I should have had already, but is this right? No. There we go. Thank you. So here our top of frame is going to be 92 3/8. So we'll go to that. 92 3/8. And we've got that marked. So the other way to check to make sure that our numbers add up here is we go back to our datum on this page. And from here to there is across and back up as to 91 1/4 to top of frame. So if you go 91 1/4 to top of frame, and then you work back down to 5, you should be on your 5 feet. So now you've checked it from top to bottom and bottom to top, and the math works out. So you should be in good shape from there. So then, if you're happy with your measurements, you square these off. And then you can start putting your information in. So down on the bottom, you know you've got, this is AFF. Then you have your 5 foot benchmark. And then your top of frame. And if they're, at this point you can go back and look and see if there's a reason to have your datum on here of your 1 1/4 back down to here. We're going to put it on there just to have it. So if you do need to carry your doors across to your windows and you want to double check that that's going to work, that's the best way to do it. So we've got our 1 1/4 down for that datum. So we'll put that on there and we'll square that up. And then from there you can cut this on the saw. And then at that point you pretty much have your story stick. And then what you're going to want to finish up with is coming back and going through your list of what you want on here. You want your job name, which this is BBD 81. So we're just going to do this real quick just so that we have it. BBD 81, and then your sheet number, which is 16. Then the frame height, which is 92 and 3/8. Frame width, in this case, is 38 and a half. 38 and a half. And I did not put this on here, frame height. Frame height, frame width. We have our finished floor, we have our benchmark, we have our date, and we have top of frame. And then in the other thing that you want to look at is your frame depth. So that's, in this case, I don't have that highlighted, but it would be, let me see if I can find it on this page back here. Here we are. So here to here. So in this case, it's 7.5 or 7.5, and that should have been highlighted. And this you're going to keep an eye on as you're going through the drawings to make sure that, you know, for each of the openings, if you're in another part of the house where the frame depth changes, you're going to want to make sure that you have that down, and also that you have it on your story stick. It just keeps you from, even though you should always have the drawings in front of the opening when you're working on that particular opening, you don't have to look through the drawings to find it. It'll be on your story stick. So frame width, frame depth is 7.5. Sorry, let's call that 7.5. Let's see what else we've got there. So that's good. So a frame depth, and then center of opening. So in this case, we've got 38.5, which I can't think of right offhand. That's 15, 16, 17. That's 19.25, I believe. I'll check that in a minute. But frame, half a frame. 19.25. Now, normally this would be, you would condense this quite a bit and make it a lot more neat and tidy, but just to put it on here so you see what we're looking for. Even though you have that on here, the next thing that we want to work on, if we've got everything down on our story stick, it's pretty much made up and ready to go. One other thing that I forgot to mention is to write story stick and save on it, and those you're going to want to do in a red marker or whatever, just so that if somebody does leave it around on the job, somebody doesn't pick it up and throw it in the garbage, which could probably happen anyway, but you do your best. So this is ready to go. The next thing that we want to do story stick wise is what we were just doing there, and that's our center orientation in the room. So in the opening, I'm sorry. So you know, all of the layout on the openings should already be in place. You know, this is something that you've gone over with the contractor and the superintendent and all to you know, get the marks that you need to work with the opening. So in this case, you know, you find your you take your frame center and then you half that. So so we've got our half at 19.25. So from here, you first of all you erase what's on there, and this usually works out best. put your 19 1/4 here. Square that up. And then, once again, put the information that you want on there. This is sheet 16. Sheet 16, half of frame, 19 1/4. I can't think of any other pertinent information on there, but I'm sure there's a couple other things. But at this point, you can use this for a number of different openings. You lead up to where you can get to the halfway point in the openings, and then of course you can't go any further because it won't fit in the opening. So you fit as many of them on there as possible. Now the thing that's nice about having this type of a story stick is that it keeps this at a right angle when you have it in the opening, and you can also move it in and out and then up and down and make sure that your opening isn't running off either in splay or if it's got yumps in it going up and down. This will tell you any issues that you have and make it a lot easier to get it fairly spot on. Let me think if there's anything else. So these are all marked up. We've gone through, we made our story sticks, we made our center story stick. And then the only other thing is, we won't go into too much depth on this, but along with the story sticks and the drawings, we like to do a book on each of the openings. This has some information inside, your startup, your job startup checklist, and so on. And then you get to your first page. These are things that we'll go over after we move on from the story stick to the actual opening and installing bucks and installation of the unit itself. But if you go through at least and mark up the units, you mark up your in this case, because of Riley the way they are, you mark it up on the sheets. So this would be sheet 16, but you would start from your lowest number and then work all the way up through. So as you're going along, you can keep track of the opening and the installation and either issues or whether or not it's been installed correctly and so on and so forth. It just keeps track of the job and gives us a place to put everything if there are any changes or anything like that. And it really works out well having a story that goes along with the installation. And I think that's about it. From here we would move on to the opening and the bucking and then the installation procedure. So I think that's it.